Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to New Wave Global. I'm Rabia Mehmood. New Wave is an independent news site looking at the world through a South Asian lens and relies on your feedback. Please do like, subscribe, and comment on our discussions. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Murtaza Danish Husaini, known by his stage name Danish Hussain, all the way from Mumbai. Danish is an actor, director, poet, a storyteller, and much more. In addition to theatre acting, he has also acted in films, web series in India and outside the country. Danish also runs a theatre company called the Hoshruba Repertory in Mumbai. Danish is also someone who's known as a person who's contributed immensely to reviving the art of Urdu storytelling via an initiative called the Dastangoi in India, and of course, has come to Pakistan, has brought Dastangoi to Pakistan as well. Danish, welcome to New Wave.
Hello, salam, adab to all the listeners and viewers of this podcast. And hello, Rabia. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
Thank you so much for saying yes to being here. We were on each other's social media for quite some time, and I used to follow your work. And it's great to be able to speak to you in person like this. I mean, through Zoom, but still.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I really want to start with Dastangoi because that's how we know you primarily in Lahore and in Pakistan. And I remember seeing some of the articles way back in the day in 2011, 2012. I remember the stories which covered your performance with another colleague of yours when you were performing in Lahore. So want to start with Dastan Goi, but I was also quick going through your bio and saw that you used to be in banking. So if what made you leave banking? I believe it was you were 30 and join theater. Why and how?
I was at the bank, and there were multiple factors which led me to a career towards acting. First, I think I was underutilized. I got into the department which really didn't use the skills I had. I was trained as an economist, and
Mm,
I got into retail banking.
mm,
So retail banking, and by that time, which we are talking about, is late 90s, liberalization in India had begun. There were restrictions removed on the entry of foreign multinational companies to come into India. So a lot of foreign banks and a lot of multinational companies were coming into India and setting up shop there. And um, as part of that, there was a lot of attraction to go and work in these companies because the salaries suddenly kind of shot up and became way better than what people were earning in late 80s or early 90s. And also, it was kind of a aspirational life because you probably thought you while working in Delhi or Bombay could very well be in Singapore or Hong Kong or New York for that matter. But however, the facade changes, the people are really the same, and the culture doesn't really change overnight. So the corporate culture was quite disappointing. It was really not so much about meritocracy. It was really about intrigue. It was really about uh, you know um, courtroom intrigues and palace intrigues and so same kind of things. And it's uh, so slowly, very swiftly your illusions start breaking, and you start realizing that it's not really about hard work and getting promotions and going up the ladder. There's a lot more that's at work or at play behind the curtain, behind the scene. Plus, underutilization, not being in the same department, not being in the department which would utilize your skill. Retail banking was very much becoming like FMCG sector कि आप बैंक अकाउंट क्रेडिट कार्ड म्यूचुअल फंड्स इंश्योरेंस ऐसे बेचिए जैसे आप साबुन तेल बेच रहे हैं और जो आपका अगर आपके सेल्स नंबर हाई हैं तो आपका बॉस आपसे खुश है आपका प्रमोशन होगा सर्विस क्वालिटी क्या है बैंक की उससे उनसे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता उनको तो ये सब चीज़ें जो हैं वो बहुत मतलब it created a kind of disillusion and I wanted to I was like there has to be more to life than just getting up in the morning, going to a bank, doing a job which we're not enjoying, uh, having, being on the wrong end of the stick of how the culture at the bank is. And I thought maybe I should do something else just to keep my evenings brighter and better. And I started looking out for options, and theater was one of the options. And when I started doing theater, I really started enjoying it. And over a period of 3 years, I kind of got convinced, कि हाँ ठीक है, maybe acting as a career I should pursue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You said that you were trained as an economist, and there were a number of reasons why banking didn't suit you, but
Mm.
theater feels like a big leap.
Mm.
So, were you always interested in literature? And when you started amateur theater, like you're saying, did you start with Urdu, performing in Urdu or Hindi, English, which language, or was there no preferable language for you?
No, I did not have any. I mean, I did not have any interest in theater or any exposure to theater when I was young. I came essentially from a family of academicians. So literature was very much a part of my life because everybody in my family, somebody was a poet, somebody was a writer, somebody was a scholar. Uh, you turn around and you would find some Arabic scholar, some Persian scholar, some Urdu scholar, some Hindi scholar, and the usual way of conversation in my family or an extended family was people would do rejoinders and repartee in Urdu poetry or would quote some philosopher or would quote some historian. So I grew up assuming that this is how life is in everybody's home. Everybody, when my mom had to admonish me, she would quote an Iqbal sher or she would quote a Ghalib sher, and I thought this is the way life is. It's only when I kind of became adolescent and I came in in high school, senior school, and when you start getting the freedom to go and visit your other friends' houses, you start realizing that their setup is very different. It's not like yours. So literature was very much a part of my life, but not theater, not performing arts. And when I began when I began theater, it was both. I mean, I started off with Hindi plays, and I also started off with English plays, and because most of the education was in English. So initially, I was wearing towards English theater.
Hmm.
But when I started performing on stage, and when I started doing Hindi and Urdu theater, I felt I could perform better if I was doing it in Hindi and Urdu. I could identify with the characters better. I could perform better. English somehow, when I would perform in English, I would not feel very comfortable. I would feel that to be very false. I would feel that this is not really the representation of who these people are and what these stories are. So slowly, I started moving away from English theater, and uh, you know, mm, I started indulging and practicing more and more of Hindi and Urdu theater.
Hmm.
I just felt the whole thing of we pretending to be English characters or, Indians behaving like New Yorkers or Indians behaving as British people, and doing a very English story on stage. I started feeling it was very false. And so I kind of then moved away from that kind of theater.
Okay. And were you in Delhi at the time or in
Yes,
Mumbai?
I was in Delhi.
Delhi.
Yeah.
So can we'll now come to Dastangoi. What is Dastangoi and how did it the initiative or and how did you start that?
So Dastangoi is essentially like a traditional art form of Urdu storytelling in which you kind of dramatically tell dastans, and especially dastans of Amir Hamza. And this tradition, though it originated in the Arab land, but it kind of, as the Islamic conquest moved, this tradition kind of spread out to Central Asia, to North Africa, to Southern Europe to South Asia and right up till Southeast Asia and China, and each region having its own version of telling Amir Hamza's tales. But this tradition, Dastangoi, the way we have it in South Asia, it possibly came to us through Iran, through Persia, and essentially when Humayun came to on his second return, when he came from Persia, I think Shah Tamas gifted him a storyteller called Takaltu Khan from his court, and Takaltu Khan came along with Humayun to this region. I mean, this is also speculation. I'm not saying it with a lot of historical conviction, but presumably this is what I've read from the scholars of Dastan traditions. Presumably it was Takaltu Khan who came, because the recorded thing is that Darbar Khan, his son, was a great storyteller in Akbar's court and was responsible for influencing Akbar, that Akbar commissioned the largest Mughal art project called Hamzanama, where the stories of Amir Hamza were illustrated on canvases, and some 1,400 folios over a period of 15 years were painted. So these tales came from Persia, and initially they were in Persian, but slowly they acquired the local color. And these tales, the Indian storytellers, they started reciting these tales in whatever the language was at that time, which possibly you referred as Rekhta or Hindivi or Hindi, because the word Urdu comes as late as 1790s or early 1800s. That's when, for the first time, the language that we understand is Urdu. The word Urdu is used for it. So these stories possibly were being performed in a language which we understand as Rekhta or Hindivi or Hindi in the 17th and the 18th century. And by the time the 19th century came in, this whole tradition was flourishing across North India, so much so that any Nawab, any feudal landlord, any Zamidar of any worth would employ a storyteller, a dastan go in their retinue. And so these stories started becoming very popular. And then when Fort William College came up in early 19th century in Kolkata, that's when the first printed form of Dastan Amir Hamza came out. Four volumes came out around 1804 or 1805, sometime around that. And then later, subsequently, other versions of Dastan Amir Hamza were published from Kolkata and from Lucknow. But the big push came when Naval Kishore Press in Lucknow commissioned Dastan Goes in 1880s and asked them to write these tales. And between 1883 and 1917, Nawal Kishore Press published 46 volumes of Dastane-i Ramza, which makes it the longest romance epic in the fantasy genre anywhere in any language across the world. There is no fantasy tale or any kind of tale which runs into these many pages in any language or in any culture. So Dastani Amir Hamza truly became the apogee of fantasy literature writing. And that's when, while it was getting published, that was the time when it was really at its height as a performing arts. But then, the dawn of 20th century saw a lot of things which kind of, I would say, disrupted the old world. There were world wars, technology came in, radio came in, television came in, cinema came in, art in itself saw a change in itself, and especially, the Russian Revolution and the rise of progressive writers movement, where suddenly uh, most of the literature, which was Victorian or fantasy literature, was seen as puerile or was seen as, childish or indulgent, and art should be more for a cause, which was really the theme of progressive writers movement. And short story writing, novel, they became an apogee of literature. So this art form slowly got relegated and kind of vanished from the face of the earth. till scholars like Shamsur Rahman Faruqi and Francis Pritchett and Dr. Rai Masum Raza. They kind of worked and brought, you know, this lost art form and these stories back into public consciousness. And then from 2005 onwards, some of us started performing these tales, and that's when they became really more known at a public level. And by now, I think, yeah, it's a very standard, established art form today in performing world today, and so many people are performing, and so many so that I don't even know who all is performing. And I think today it has really become truly public in the sense that people don't even know who is the person who started or revived the art form, or I mean, so it's great for the art form, I think.
Yeah, I remember just seeing this story in one of the papers, when I had started reporting myself, that this duo from Delhi is going to be performing in Lahore, and the performance was called Dastangoi. And so, coming to this again, when was the first time that you came to Lahore? And was that like your first performance was of this art form with your colleague?
So the first time I came to perform in Lahore was in 2006 when the Pirzada festival used to happen. And I think I was acting in a play called Mirza Bagh,
Mhm.
which was basically Brian Fry's play called Aristocrats, an adaptation of that. And we were performing at the Pirzada festival, and we had just begun the whole thing about Dastangoi. It was like just a year old, year and a half old since its revival, and only a handful of shows had happened. And Shahnaz Ijazuddin was translating the abridged version of Tilisme Hoshruba, which Penguins was publishing at that time. And Mehmood Faruqi, who started Dastan Goi, he wrote to Shahnaz that I'm coming to Lahore to perform in another play. And Shahnaz was very gracious, was excited. She immediately invited me to her house for dinner. And she threw a small party in which she literally invited the who's who of Lahore
Mhm.
to a private Dastan performance. And I think that was really the first Dastan performance in Pakistan, 2006, November. And I was quite zapped because, that private performance at Shahnaz Jazuddin's house had Intizar Saab and had Shoaib
Mhm.
Saab and Moniza Hashmi and, Madiha Gohar and Shahid Nadeem and almost who's who of the Lahore Glitterati was there, people from the intellectual life, from the literary life, from the art world. So it was a great exposure, and I remember Shoaib Saab, he even wrote an article on this. Intizar Saab had a huge body of work on storytelling, so he had some phenomenal things to say. And then I think the first time where we formally came and performed was in 2007 when we had a three-city tour of Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. And I think um, in Lahore, we performed in Bagh Jinnah at that time at the
Mhm.
Open Theatre. And in Karachi, we performed at Mahatta Palace. Um, and in Islamabad, we performed at the library, uh,
Okay.
the National Library, which is next to I think your Senate House or um, your main Parliament building.
Yeah.
And hmm, sorry.
No, no, no. I was just going to say way back to Rafi Pir Arts Festival. That's way back. I had no idea that that was the first time when you would.
2006, that was the first time when I performed in Lahore at the Pirzada Festival. So
And
2007 is when we came with the Dastan performances. Then in 2011, I was in Karachi for some private thing. I think one of my uncle had passed away, so it was possibly his birthday or something I had come for. And coincidentally, at that time, Karachi Literature Festival was also going on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I just dropped in because there were many friends there, and I just sent a cold mail to Napa. I went to Napa's website and I just saw their email and I sent a cold mail saying I'm so and so and I do this and this and I'm visiting Karachi right now, and it would be lovely if I could drop in at Napa. And the next day I get a mail that Mr. Zamuddin would like to invite you for high tea. So I was quite zapped. And so I went and I had a great time chatting with Zia Saab. And Zia Saab said, "Why don't you come and how long are you staying?" And I said, "I'm here just for another 3 days or something." And he said, "Why don't you come and give a lecture on Dastangoi?" And I think a day after, so he introduced me to every Saab, Khalid Saab, and all the other senior faculty members at Napa. And Rahat Saab, Khalid Saab, they all were very generous. And a day after, a lecture was kept in which I came and I kind of gave a lecture on Dastangoi. And all of these people, Fawad and who have kind of become stars in their own right today. They were all present there. And I remember a very interesting conversation with the students at Napa at that time. And they were all like, we all have been wanting to perform this thing, but somehow we've not been able to get a handle over it as to how do we begin the performance, how do we initiate the performance, and how do we set up the performance. And when the lecture happened, they said, "Oh, after watching your videos, we've kind of understood, okay, this is how we can set up the whole performance and do it." And surely within a year or something, they started performing. And I remember in 2014, when I'd come at the Islamabad Literature Festival, we performed together. I mean, in the sense that Fawad and his partner were like a curtain raiser. They performed first, and then after that, we came on the stage and we performed. So yeah, and I'm still in touch with some of the Dastangos in Pakistan, and it's great. We still have very meaningful exchanges.
So yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking. The sort of the how amazing it is to be able to have that or to have had that cultural exchange. So how do you see that the India-Pakistan cultural exchange? It's a slightly political question, not slightly very political, um, because one is for it and it happens in waves. Like when you started coming here in 2006 onwards, those were the good years, and then these things happen in phases. There's bilateral relationships and then things are bad, so the exchange stops. People, or I mean, some people do come and some others do go, but it's not very public. So how important it is to keep on meeting each other and looking at things which we have in common, good things.
See, it's not just about India and Pakistan. It
Hmm.
is general zeitgeist across the world. If you look at the ruling class across the world, one of the ways somehow they can consolidate the power is to be divisive in their politics, is to forever create the other, which can be blamed for all the ills, and thus keep distracting the people and thus keep consolidating their own power. That's like a general trend all across the world. It's not really unique to India or to Pakistan. So this kind of politics, what it does, that it has a very myopic vision about. It is only concentrated about maintaining the status quo or keeping the power within one's grasp, and it kind of misses out the long-term vision or the long-term view, which is about general welfare, which is about prosperity, which is about optimizing optimal usage of the resources of a country, which is about human welfare index, it misses out on all these long term vision. So what happens that you are forever caught up in this vicious loop of of what I should say, uh, of this constant blaming the other, of this political strife, of this violence, of this, and violence doesn't really mean physical. I mean, even emotional kind of violence. So forever there is, जैसे आप उर्दू में कहते हैं रस्साकशी में आप फंसे हुए हैं, कि where it is only about the immediate politics, which is about the immediate return, which is about the immediate consolidation of power, and somehow you are never able to defeat or beat or break this cycle and look at the long term vision as to let's talk about healing, let's talk about environment, let's talk about cleaning the air, let's talk about preserving our intangible heritage or tangible heritage. So somehow that gets missed out, and I think that is a problem not just of our countries, it is a problem worldwide right now, and this would become increasingly more because there is a lot of strain in terms of the resources and in terms of the people who needs to be fed. And I think the strife will the violence and the strife and this kind of parochial divisive politics would we would see more of that in coming years. So somewhere I think we need to raise the we need to raise the public consciousness. We need to kind of ask these questions as to why constantly we are in this bickering mode. Why are we not asking really questions about long term vision? Why are we not asking about preserving heritage, preserving whatever environmental resources we have, cleaning up what's gone wrong and whatever is there? Why not we talk about people's welfare? Why are we getting into this constant surveillance kind of a state where data is being taken away, where institutions are eroding, where people are burdened with more and more taxes, and people forever are in this trapped in this kind of a place where they cannot even have a vision, and they are constantly forced to think about this vicious cycle. So I think that is the problem which we are facing globally, and I think we need to have conversations, and we need to kind of either through art or through journalism or through documentary or through whichever medium, raise these questions and somehow take these conversations to wider public.
Yeah,
And
and G.
yeah, and tie it up even with our electoral politics.
Definitely. And also how so you mentioned progressive writers and resistance and culture of and heritage of resistance, and now you're mentioning so many other issues that we're globally collectively confronted with, specifically in the current political climate, where the world is definitely changing in not the best way, or the world as we know it is changing or evolving in more and more populist politics, specifically what's happening in the West and what's happening in the Middle East and elsewhere. So I want to speak about art as resistance because this became a conversation. I mean, it was always a conversation, but um, more of a conversation after October 7, 2023, when we saw Artists for Ceasefire. Then there was this sort of whole campaign on block people who use social media but do not use for advancing their own brands, artists mostly across the world, Western mostly, and do not speak about Palestine. And there was this whole thing like who's wearing a ceasefire pin, who's not wearing a ceasefire pin, who's put up a story on Instagram, who's not put up a story on Instagram. And some of that also came to South Asia, and also in into Pakistan. People were looking at who are the artists who said something, who haven't said something. And I remember seeing you posting about it initially and writing that it's important to speak against injustices and to take that position when you know em- one would say by default, like most of artists in Pakistan would do that, but we didn't see that happening in Pakistan either. Some did. And then of course in India some were speaking about it, others were not. Although politically the position of the countries were fairly okay when it came to Palestine and in Israel. But yes, but how do you see the role of artists in when it comes to something like this, or just about any other political issue that they care about, or an injustice? Is it the role of an artist, or to definitely say something,
I first I
or
think
it is just for the sake of art?
yeah, no, first I think we need to understand that um, economic well-being, uh, having a clean and a better and a great environment and ecosystem, and social justice, they're all tied up. They're not independent of each other. You cannot have economic progress at the cost of social injustice, at the cost of apartheid, at the cost of oppressing a certain bunch of people or a gender. Similarly, environment and preserving the environment or being in harmony with the environment is not independent of economic progress and social injustice. So eventually, we need to understand that it's like a one harmonious system where everything is tied together. And if we need to really find some kind of a balance, we need to kind of understand all these issues together. So if people are only talking about economic progress, but are uh, uh, constantly neglecting or overlooking social justice, then it is economic progress for only a few and not for everybody. It is exploitation, actually, to say that. That's what it is all about. So I think that is one thing. Second thing is this, that what is art actually? It is not independent of the world it lives in. It is, in some sense, a reflection of what the world is. It is, in some sense, the response of the person who's creating the art to the world that that artist is living in. Every art is about the period that it's created in. Now, the thing is this, that there are various schools of thoughts about it. I think Javed Akhtar, said that to expect an artist to respond immediately to a social event is kind of unfair, because when you respond immediately, it's more like reportage and not really like art, which is really what a journalist's job is. And art necessarily involves a certain kind of a gestation period where, things kind of sink in, settle with you, and then they brew. And at some later stage, in some other form, it kind of comes out as a response to the event, which is like gone in the past. But it disconnects, or sorry, it connects in a way which is not linear, which is not logical by reasoning, but in some sense you find the connection, and that's how art responds. And I kind of believe in that, and I think that's really how art works. It's really not about something happened and I immediately have to write a poem about it, or make a movie about it, or write a play about it. But then the thing is this, that uh, the way art comes in creation is also with constant interaction with the environment that it's living in. If these questions are not concerning you, if these questions, let's say you are the part of the problem, in the sense that you are an elite, and uh, hunger doesn't matter to you, and pollution doesn't matter to you, and you have all the facilities of the world, and your passport is such that it allows you to travel everywhere, and you all doors are open to you. uh, so possibly, because it's not knocking at your doorstep, perhaps it won't even reflect in your art also. So somewhere, you have to constantly engage with what is happening around you to kind of let that seep into your work. It's just like any other thing. If there is violence around you, that violence would seep into your life in some sense, and it would make you anxious. It would make you trouble. If you're living in a broken relationship, it would affect you in some sense, in some way. So if you're not really indulging with the social injustices of the world, and somehow you're not having a conversation around it, it would not reflect into your art. And I believe that as this Italian philosopher, I'm forgetting his name, Agambo, I think. He says that what is a contemporary? A contemporary is a person who shines light on the on those slivers of darknesses which the blindness which which the brightness of an epoch or the brightness of an era kind of hides. So if there are events or people in a certain era which are kind of so illuminating that they kind of dazzle you, uh, but there are a lot of things which kind of slip through the cracks, and that's what an artist should do, turn the light on those cracks and let those forgotten people be seen and brought into light and brought to forefront. And I think it's like, as I say, कि उर्दू में कि आर्ट जो है वो दीवार में एक खिड़की खोल देती है
Hmm.
कि suddenly आपके सामने एक दीवार है, and that's your horizon, and suddenly art opens a window, and through that window you see the horizon is a little ahead, and your world becomes a bit wider and bigger. And I think pushing the envelope and constantly raising the bar for human consciousness is really what art should be doing and what art does. And I think great art does that only. Otherwise, art is just fast food. It's just great as a taste, but really doesn't give any nutrition to your soul.
Hmm. And also just thinking about that we live in the age of social media now. So beyond producing art, beyond writing or performing or thinking about something and then coming up with a thoughtful response, although yes, ideally everyone should think before taking a position on something, but beyond that, we live in the age of social media, and I specifically mentioned Palestine, and of course we can speak about other injustices. You also mentioned climate and whatnot, and surveillance and privacy, and rightfully so. But we live in this. It's a genocide we have seen live streamed on our phones in HD, as someone spoke about it, and so and it's the age of social media, and it played such a crucial role, and it's increasingly playing a controversial yet a crucial role in whatever's happening around us. You can't ignore it. It enables violence in certain cases. It also helps us see, and violence, you can't hide it anymore. But taking a position sometimes um, can have impact on people's careers, and artists are a part of that because of the nature of their work. Actors, writers, musicians, and whatnot, everywhere in the world. So how do you see that? Because I've seen that you're not someone who's afraid to take a position, even when it comes to certain injustices or treatment of minorities in India. I've seen you posting about it. And this is something that we don't see. Like, even for instance, in Pakistan, there are so many atrocities, so many injustices, and we feel like sometimes people's feeds are just about themselves and not just even about their work or their art. And this sounds a very judgmental, like my comment sounds very judgmental. Maybe it is slightly, but sometimes when one is looking at someone's work, you want them to also take a position on something, say something, raise awareness. How do you see that?
I think people should not put the burden of taking positions for them. And a lot of the time it's very vicarious that, oh, some celebrity should take a position. I think if you want to take a position, you take a position. And if you think for whatever reason you are not taking a position, then it's unfair of you to expect a celebrity or somebody to take a position for you. We should not, we should be looking at the reasons as to why we want a position to be taken, and not because, oh, this person has achieved so and so, and this person has done so and so, and that's why, we expect this person to take a position. I think most of the time people themselves perhaps will not take a stand when push comes to shove, but very eagerly would want the celebrities to do that. So I think one should speak for themselves. I speak for myself, and I think I take a position not because I'm so and so or something. I take a position because I think I have a voice, and somewhere that voice needs to be documented that this voice had to say this thing. which is my stand of what I'm feeling right now. So I'm saying the concern for me is not because I'm so and so I'm taking this position, or because people expect me to take a position. I speak for myself only. I feel this is what it is, and I want to document it that this is how I feel about this thing. And I think if others want to take a position, they should do it for reasons better, good for themselves, and not because XYZ needs to take a position on that. You're also right that yes, as you become more famous and as you become rich, there is more at stake, because the point is this, that wealth and power kind of go hand in hand. And those who have enormous amount of wealth has a lot of things at stake when they go confrontational with power. So you would increasingly find across the globe people who are really rich and wealthy more and more compromised in terms of their political ideology and in terms of their moral ideology, because taking a stance normally would mean that you are kind of in the crosshair of the those who are powerful, and people would not like that because they have so much at stake. um, but you still find people across the globe, artists, all kind of artists across the globe, who have taken positions and who have said, who have documented, who've put on record what needs to be said and what they believe is right. I think when it really comes to injustice, uh, it's really black and white when it comes to injustice. Any conversation around injustice, trying to justify it, is really sophistry. It's really not. I mean, it's when you see violence happening, when you see oppression happening, when you see injustice happening, uh, it is like day and night. It's as clear as that, that this is injustice and it should be called out. If you're not calling it out, if you are talking around it, however cogent your argument is, however logical and intelligent it may sound, it is really sophistry. And I think before a lot of this problem will not arise if people actually start asking questions to themselves as to what am I to do in this situation. I mean, there is a whole lot of a thing which this October 7th thing has exposed, the hypocrisy of our times. We all used to think, what were the Germans thinking when the Nazis were doing the Holocaust? Or what was the Islamic world thinking when Karbala was happening? And now it's very evident. It is really exactly what is happening right now. You go through people's social media, and it seems as if they're oblivious of the world they're living in. It seems as if there is no Palestine happening, or there is no climate change happening, or there's no Rohingya happening, there's no Sudan happening. So I think that's exactly how people lived in past when these different other genocides were happening across the world. They just continued living as if that part doesn't exist, as if you're an ostrich, you bury your head in the sand, and the trouble will just go away. And I think the existence of social media has starkly kind of made us realize this thing, that this is exactly what happened in the 1930s or in the past whenever the genocide was happening elsewhere. That this question, what were the people doing at that time? Why couldn't they stand up and say, no, this should not happen? They were doing exactly what we are doing right now, just living as if wishing it away and living as if that it doesn't exist. And social media has kind of exposed that.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Danish. This was all very, very insightful and great to be able to have your perspective, because we all have our views, but it's great to be speaking to someone who's part of a certain world and is not afraid to speak his mind, and all can also put things into perspective for us. Thank you to our viewers for watching. Khuda Hafiz.